Welcome back to my steps to buying a home. Last week we talked a little bit about the offer process, and one thing we discussed was inspection. So we're going to jump ahead, assume your offer has been accepted, and now we're going to talk a little bit about the inspections that are potential. Hopefully, since I'm doing it by memory, I won't forget any. So the first is a general home inspection. General home inspectors know a little bit about a lot of things, and so typically that lasts anywhere from 2 to 4 hours. It is an opportunity for you to be in the home. It can cost from $350 to $650 depending on the size of the home, and it is your opportunity. The inspector goes through everything: the roof, the plumbing, any potential leaks, any pests, anything you can think of, really. And it's important to know, though, that he's not an expert. So he will look at the electrical and he can kind of know, like, okay, there's some issues in this box, but he's typically going to, if he finds something, recommend that you get an electrician or a plumber or an engineer or a well person, those kind of people to come in and take a further look. So that's the general inspection. It's almost always done, unless you yourself have that kind of knowledge. The next thing is septic. If you have public sewer, oftentimes people will forego this inspection, but if you have a private septic, it is super important to have an inspection, and that needs to be done by a septic company. I have recommendations, and they check the tank, the leach field, etc., make sure everything is working. If you do have public septic, sometimes people will request an inspection. Basically, they send a scope down the line from the house to the road, which is the part that the homeowner is responsible for, and make sure that there's no cracks or issues. It's usually not a major concern unless there's like a big tree or something. The next thing is water. So if you, again, have public water, frequently this is not examined because it's just coming in from the town. But if you have a private well, a drilled well, or a dug well, then you definitely want that system inspected, and that includes the well pump, the well tank, etc. In addition to that, it is the water quality, and you can, again, have this done whether it's public or private, but typically people will forego on a public water. And there is important things to remember about your water. First of all, potable water is kind of like the low bar that says that this is water that you can drink, but we really want to do a full comprehensive examination of that water. So your inspector will take a sample, it goes to a lab, and they test it for all sorts of things: radon, arsenic, iron, bacteria, etc. They want to make sure this is healthy water for you to be drinking and using. And if necessary, there are systems that can be put in place to address any deficiencies in the water. The next thing is radon testing, and this is done in the air and in the water. Radon is a radioactive gas that is given off by the decay of rock, strongly given off by granite, which we live in the granite state. So about, I forget what the exact percentage is. I don't remember now, so I'm not going to say it because I would just be guessing. But I did just hear the percentage of homes that have too much radon. It's not great. The state of New Hampshire has a very low threshold for what they consider acceptable levels, and it's the same thing. Your inspector has a test kit. It's there for 2 days usually, and then it gets sent off to a lab to measure the radon levels. If your radon levels are above 4 PCI liters. Anyway, you can put in a radon abatement system, which costs somewhere between $1,200 and $1,300, give or take a little bit. And they can also check radon in the water. Let me think if I'm forgetting something. So the next thing is hazardous waste. Again, it's on the disclosures, frequently not tested or not looked at. Lead paint, if you'd like, that is a very expensive inspection, but can be done for sure if you're worried. And then also there is hazardous waste, lead paint. Shoot, I'm forgetting one. Pests. Pest inspections. And pest inspections include mice, termites, carpenter ants, all that kind of stuff. It's usually wrapped up into your general inspection, but if you are looking for a VA loan, it is a required inspection. So you spend a whole chunk of your day at the house doing all those inspections, and then you renegotiate with the seller on any concerns. There are 3 ways that you can negotiate with the seller. You can accept it as it is. That's not really one of the ways, but you can accept it as it is, or if there's no issues. You can ask that the inspector take care of any of the, not the inspector, the seller address any of the issues. So for example, if radon was found, you could request that the seller have a radon abatement system installed prior to moving in. When you ask a seller to do something, it is really important that your agent writes their request properly. If you just say, like, I'm trying to think of something small, fix the electrical panel, that means that there's the seller could fix it themselves, and who knows if they're really capable. So whenever I write inspection requests, I always write that the work be done by a licensed professional and that all receipts and reports be provided to the buyer prior to closing. This is super important to make sure it's done correctly. Okay, moving on. The third way is that you could ask for a cash, no, not third, second, whatevs. You could ask for a cash concession to cover the cost of any repairs. And this can be done in 2 ways. So this is how it's kind of split up. It can be cash back towards closing, which would mean you leave all the sale price the same and that you just get the money back towards your closing costs. This is typically what I recommend because it keeps the cash in your pocket. So for example, let's say you needed $1,500 back. The seller would contribute $1,500 to your closing costs, which means the $1,500 you had allocated to your closing costs could now be used to make the repairs. So that's typically what I recommend. But the other way is to ask for it directly off of the sale price. So again, if you had a property that you were buying for $250,000, you would say, okay, well now we're going to only offer you $248,500 or something like that. That reduces your mortgage, but usually doesn't leave the money in your pocket to make the repairs. So that is the inspection process, and I hope it was helpful. We are going to talk a little bit about the appraisal next week. And we're almost done with this series. So if you have any questions or concerns, give me a call. Don't forget, dream big.